Welcome to LabMinutes.com and our lab video series on Cisco ASA 1000V. You can find a complete list of ASA 1000V video on our website by clicking on the link above and sign up for our newsletters to receive the latest video updates. In this video, we will configure device profiles and create an edge firewall for an ASA 1000V in VNMC mode. Device profiles are global configuration that include things like AAA, SNMP, Syslog, routing, and DHCP. There are actually two types of device profiles, a generic device profile that is also used by the VSG, and an edge device profile that is specific to an ASA 1000V. Edge firewall, on the other hand, is nothing but a configuration container that does not really do anything until you assign ASA 1000V resource to it. And this is similar in concept to service profile in Cisco UCS if you're familiar with that. Here's our lab setup. We're going to have a pair of redundant ASA 1000V installed with the outside VLAN of 128, the management VLAN of 117, and the inside VXLAN of 6010. Also, we have a failover VLAN, but it's not really shown in this diagram. We have a switch 1 loopback of 172.16.01 that we're going to be using as our NTP server. On the server VLAN 32, we have VNMC at IP of .32. We have a Syslog SNMP server at the IP of .40, and we also have our ACS server installed at .100 that we're going to be using to test our AAA. In order to create a device profile for an ASA 1000V, we first need to create a device policies. So if you go to our VNMC web interface and go to policy management, and here we have a device configurations where you can create or specify different device policies. Since the device policies our profile that we're going to be creating is generic enough, we're going to be creating that at the DC1 level instead of the lower level of App 1, so it can be shared in case you have, for example, multiple applications. So here let's expand DC1 and then policies. So here's a couple of the configuration that you can create. So first let's deal with AAA. Here we need to create a remote server. So if you click on remote server group, and you can see here we have different options of type of the servers, authentication servers that you can configure. So for us, we're using ACS, and the protocol we'll be using is TACX. This is for management. Once you click add, you have to give it a name. We'll call it LM_TAC TACACS TACX. And then we click the add server. For interface, we'll type management, which is the interface that we want the ASA to use to communicate with the TACX server. And the server IP for us is 172.16.32.100. We'll leave the port default TCP 49, and the secret we'll use Cisco 123. And click OK. Next we go to the auth policies. Then you click add auth policy. For the name, we can call it LM auth, and then you can basically add different remote access method. And here we have serial, enable, HTTP, SSH, and telnet. So let's do enable first. The server group is the LM_TACX that we just created. Make sure the admin state is chosen with enable. And the protocol is TACX+. Click OK. Then we add the next one that we would like to do is HTTP, enable, again, LM_TACX and TACX+. And the last protocol that we want, or access method we want to configure is SSH, enable, TACX, and again, TACX+. Okay, then you click OK. So that's it for the AAA. Now let's move on to core file. Core file, although there's not much to configure, and this is just the location where you want the core dump to be placed. So here we're just going to leave it default. If you click on it, you can see you have an option to choose the FTP server location and the directory. Here we're just going to leave it alone. For the fault, this is to specify how a fault that occurs in the ASA is going to be treated or displayed. You can see this flapping interval, retention action, and retention interval as well. So here we're not going to configure that. We'll leave it at default. For the log file, and this has got to do with the local locking with the log file. So you can specify log level, file size, and the number of the backup file that you want to keep. Okay, we're not going to configure that either. For SNMP, you will see later we're trying to add the SNMP to the device profile with the ASA, it will say it's not really supported, so we're going to skip that as well. Now let me just make sure I move down to the right level. Right here, this is where our AAA is created. So the last thing that we have on our list is Syslog server. And here we already have one created back in the VSG video, so we can just use that, and all we need to do is just click edit. And on the server, if we click edit, see right here, just to make a note for the server interface, and this is specific to the ASA 1000V, we already have the management interface added. So just want to make a quick note on that. Okay, so now that we have all these components configured pretty much, we can go ahead and create our device profile. And if you look under, again, we need to make sure that we are doing it under DC1. We have one created for, again, back in the VSG video, we can create a brand new one for our ASA here. So we call it LM-ASA device. Let's call it default. Okay, for the time zone, let's make sure we select the right time zone. For us is Pacific time, and that will be Los Angeles. Now for the policy, let's go through this one by one. First is the DNS server, so we click add DNS, and our DNS IP is 172.16.32.40, and interface is management. Okay, for an NTP server, we said we're going to be using switch 1 loopback interface. So that would be 172.16.0.1. Interface name management, and we're not doing NTP authentication. So click OK. Scroll down, you got domain. So click domain. We'll call it LabMinutes, and the actual name is LabMinutes.com. Click OK. Now for the SNMP, if you hover on this little icon here, you will see it said for supported it's all version of VSG, and for not supported it's all version of ASA 1000V. So you can see right here, if you configure SNMP and under this device profile and assign that to an ASA, it would not show up on the ASA config or not even used because it's not supported. Okay, for Syslog server, we're going to point to the one that we configured. Default, we can use the default core file, which is going to leave that unconfigured. Policy agent log file can use the default, and for the auth policy, we're going to point that to the AAA server that we configure under the name LM-auth. So click OK. Okay, so that is, like I mentioned earlier in this video, there's two types of the device profile, and we just do the generic one. Now we're going to do the Edge device profile, which is under, you configure that under service policies. And again, we're going to do this under the DC1 level. And here are the list of the policies that you can configure. So the one that's related to the Edge device profile, actually let me skip ahead to the service profile so I can show you what components is or can be configured under the Edge device profile right here. So if you're trying to add, and then click on policy tab, you'll see things like routing policies, IP audit signature policies, VPN device policies, and DHCP policies. Okay, so those are the things that you can configure for Edge device profile. So if you go back to the service policies, and then first let's take care of routing. You can do add routing policies, and let's call it LM tenant 1 routing. And you can add static route. One thing that you want to note right here, if you again hover your mouse over this little information icon, and if you read it, it said, if you want to configure a route through management interface, please use the device CLI to do that. So if you're trying to configure any route that's pointing out management interface right here, it would not work. You can see right here, as soon as you type in management, the box turned red, so that's telling you that it's not possible to configure it right here. So now there's a couple routes that we want to configure off our management interface. If you look at here, we want the management interface to be able to access the server VLAN 32 as well as the switch 1 loopback IP. In order to do that, you have to go on the ASA CLI, and then you can configure it as a static route. So route management, first we'll take care of the route pointing to the VLAN 32, and then the gateway is 117.1. and then the other one is route management 172.16.0.1 0, and then 16.117.1, and then we can try to test a ping 32. Let's say ACS is 100, so you can ping that, and let's try switch one loopback interface, and you can also ping that as well. Okay, so our static route is good. Let's make sure we save that. And then if we come back here to the VNMC, let's say we want to configure a default route pointing out the outside interface. So for the prefix is all 0. Prefix subnet mask is also 0. For the next hop, we're gonna point it to our next hop switch out of the outside interface. So right here, which is 128.1, and then the interface will use the outside, and we'll leave the metrics at 1. Okay, so that's all the route that we're going to configure for now. Click OK. The next thing we want to configure is the IP audit, another one of the configuration that's part of the edge device profile, and that is a signature policy, basically which signatures that you want to have enabled as part of the IPS features in the ASA or IP audit command. And let's name this LM SEC0071. And here, any signatures that you want to disable, just move it to the right. But let's assume that we want to have all these signatures enabled, which they are by default. Then we need just to click OK. For the VPN, we're just going to skip that, and we're going to look at that in a separate video. And the last thing we want to configure is DHCP. Okay, and under the, so here we're going to configure the ASA to act as a DHCP server to a host sitting on the VLAN, which we're going to have a test machine to test our DHCP server. So here under the DHCP server, we'll add DHCP server. Actually, since the DHCP server is going to be more of a, it's going to be IP specific to the app one, instead of creating that at a DC1 level, let's create that down at the app one level. So here again, expand policy, and then DHCP server, add a server policy, and let's call it tenant1 DHCP. We'll leave everything out by default for us to ping timeout, lease time, and then we'll go to the policy tab, and then you can add the DNS server. Let's call it, we want to use the 4.2.2.2 as our DNS server. So let's name something like LM4222. The domain name, let's come up with some bogus domain name called tenant1, and let's add the server, which is 4.2.2.2. And for the server interface, you're telling it it's on the outside. Okay, for the IP range, and our subnet we're dealing with here is 10.01/24. So let's say if we want to start the IP at 10.01.128 and ends at 10.01.223, and it's /24. Okay, Win server is just gonna not configure that since we don't have one, and then we'll click OK. All right, now that we have policies configured, we can go back to the service profile at the DC1 level. Actually, let's do that. Let's do this at the app1 level, and then go to Edge Firewall, Edge Device Profiles, and then add Edge Device Profile. For the name, let's call it LM tenant1 Edge Device. And for the policies, routing policies, we'll select tenant1 routing. Signature policy is LM SEC0071. VPN we did not configure. For DHCP, let's enable DHCP policy. Interface, we're gonna use it for the inside interface and specify the server we just configured, and we click OK. Alright, so now that we have both of the generic device profiles and the edge device profile configured, now we can go ahead and create an edge firewall, which is just a configuration container, and then we'll assign those two device profile to it. So here we'll go to the resource management and then manage resources, and at the level app1 under edge firewall, we want to create an edge firewall. Okay, so we're going to call it tenant1 DC1 app1 ASA1. Okay, edge A mode is a high availability, and here this is where you choose the two device profile that you just created. The first one is LM ASA device default, and the second one is LM tenant 1 edge device. Next, we have to create the data interface, and here on the ASA, the only two interfaces that's remain unconfigured right now is the outside and the inside, so let's go ahead and add that. So the first interface is inside, and row right here, you can see the only two options you have is inside or outside. For the primary IP, since it's going to be a gateway for our private VXLAN here, and the last octet is 1. And for the secondary IP, the last octet is 2/24. Click OK. And then on the outside, you add data interface. The name will be outside. Primary IP is 172.16.128.16, and with the standby IP of 17. Then click OK. Then OK. We know that we already have the ASA registered as a resource, so the next thing we're going to do is to create a pool, which will be used or assigned to the edge firewall that we just created. So let's create a pool at the tenant 1 level and add pool. We'll call it tenant 1 ASA pool, and we'll assign the resource, which is our ASA, to be a member of the pool. And you can also, you can see right here, you can have a single pool for both ASA 1000V and VSG. So for this pool, let's just create it exclusively for ASA 1000V. Click OK, and then OK. And if we go back to the edge firewall that we created just now, you can see there's two options to assign the ASA 1000V. You can do it manually. This is where you can select a specific ASA 1000V and have it assigned to the edge firewall, or you can just say we don't really care which ASA 1000V is being used for this edge firewall. So you can just do that from the pool and let the system select one for us. So here you specify the pool, click OK. You can see the state is applying now. You can see the state right now is failed to apply, so let's do a quick troubleshooting. You can look at the faults and see if it gives us any clue as far as if there's anything that we might have misconfigured. Okay, so scroll down, there's a, let's see, error message right here. It says double click here for detail. And if you read the description of the error, you can see right here that the static route interface name outside does not match. So let's go back and take a look. We might have a different, as far as the case of our spelling there. So if we go back to policy management and then service policy, I believe we created that at the DC1 level with the routing. Right here, click edit, and it looks like we have a slightly different spelling. And I believe when we create the outside interface, we have it the name and spell it with our uppercase. So let's try this and see if that pretty much fixed our error there. So click apply, OK. Go back to resource management, and you can see right there, once you fix that, it becomes applied. So there you go, a little bit of troubleshooting bonus for you. Now that we have all those configured and the config has been applied successfully to the ASA 1000V, you can also look at the state right here. This is the firewall that's been assigned to the ASA that's been assigned to the edge firewall. Status is associated and it's also reachable. So now if we jump onto our console on the ASA, one thing you can see right there, the name has not changed yet. So let's see, right there, that's one more thing we need to configure to make sure that the ASA name has changed to the one that you want. So you can see right now by default it's at edge firewall, and let's say we want to change that to LM tenant 1. Actually, we want to call it tenant 1 DC1 app 1 ASA 1. Okay, so let's save that, and as soon as you save it, you can see the name gets propagated down to the ASA. Let's go ahead and do some show commands. So to show IP interface brief, you can see now the both of gig 00 and 01, which is our outside and inside interface, are now configured. To show nameif, you can also see the name of the inside and outside interface also reflected here. If you do show fail, now you can see pretty much all of the interface are in the monitor state, so management inside and outside. Okay, if you also notice there's an additional interface that got created, which is the SP. Let's see if we can do show run interface real quick just to look. There you go. You need to spell it out. And that's because there's by default there's security profile named default, and for every security profile that is created on the VNMC, there will be a corresponding interface security profile with that. Okay, so there's nothing we need to do with that right now. I just want to point that out. And then if you do show run AAA, and these are the three types of the AAA authentication that we configure for enable HTTP and SSH. And now if you do show run route, we should also have our default route right there pointing out to the pointing out of the outside interface. So if you're trying to ping 172.16.128.1, which is the next hop on the outside, so you can ping that. And if you want to ping, say, internet 4222, you can see you can ping that as well. Okay. So now let's say we want to SSH just to test our AAA authentication to the SSH to the ASA. So if we need to allow SSH, and we're going to be using our jump box here, 32.0. So we're going to need to allow, let's say, the whole VLAN 32. And specify the interface coming in is management. And now let's try to launch putty. Let me save that, LM-ASA1, save, then open. There you go, so a little bigger for you guys to see. And then here, I just want to show that on the ACS server, let's log in with ACS admin account. So we already have the ASA 1000V created or added as a network resource or network device right here with the management IP 117.16, and we have a user called LabMinutes with password Cisco that's trying to lock in with that, and then Cisco. And you can see right there we get dropped into the enable prompt, and then you can log in to the ASA using TACX. Okay, so that's just right there verify that our TACX or AAA is working to the ACS. And now let's go and do show run and see what additional configuration that got pushed down from the VNMC. Obviously we got the inside and outside interface. We got our time zone and DNS server with the domain name. Okay, we got logging configuration with the logging server 32.40. Failover still there, static routes, and then AAA server. Obviously SNMP was not configured. And then right there we got DHCP as well. So the ASA will be a DHCP server for the VLAN, the inside interface. You can see even on the CLI, if you try to do, or if you're trying to configure, if you know the regular syntax for SNMP is SNMP-server is not even available. So you can't really configure SNMP while you're on VNMC mode. Okay, so next thing we want to verify is I'm going to launch the Syslog server on the TFTP D64. So right here, Syslog server, and you can already see there's some log messages coming in already from these 117.16, which is our ASA right here. Okay, so that Syslog is working as well. The last thing we want to verify is the DHCP server. We already have a machine right here on the inside. So let me bring up the interface to that. We have a machine called Win7 non-cord that's sitting on the inside behind the ASA, and even before we logging into the machine to look, if you do show DHCPD bind, and you can see the IP has already been given out to the machine. And if you log in to verify, okay, and then open up the command line and just do a quick IP config all, you see that the IP this particular machine has received is 10.0.1.128, which is our starting IP of our DHCP scope that we configure on the 1000V or ASA 1000V. Subnet mask /24 gateway is 1.1, which is the ASA itself, and the DNS server is 4222. So you can ping the default gateway, which is the inside interface of the ASA. At this point, the host does not have access to internet since we haven't really configured the NAT and all that. So this is pretty much as far as we can go as far as the verification of our configuration. Okay, so that's it for our video on ASA 1000V device profile and edge firewall configuration in VNMC mode. You can visit our website to view an extensive list of our lab videos and sign up to get access to additional lab contents. Thank you for watching LabMinutes.com, and I'll see you guys in the next video.